A coworker screamed in my face, sparking an anxiety attack. Unbeknownst to them, I had solid evidence ready for HR total chaos ensued. This narrative unfolds a few years ago, while I was employed in security at a baseball stadium. I was not one of the guards inspecting bags or directing patrons, however. My division was the 24-hour security, primarily responsible for monitoring restricted zones, surveillance cameras, and being attentive to emergencies within the park. Each department had its own supervisor, with an overarching manager supervising the entire security operation. It was an incredibly enjoyable job, especially given the park's stunning scenery. During my night shifts, I often found myself as the sole person wandering the park, appreciating the magnificent city views and the riverwalk that was included in our patrol area. Regrettably, the majority of my colleagues were sexist middle-aged men. At the time of this account, I was 20 years old, 5 feet 2 inches tall, and weighed 112 pounds. I had actually resigned once before due to sexual harassment. A coworker would initiate random conversations with me and insist that I work alongside him to maximize our time together, while behind my back, he insisted to others that I desired him and made disparaging comments regarding my chest size, claiming that women with larger breasts were inherently more sexual. It was challenging enough to command respect and authority to ensure everyone's safety without being demeaned daily. I attempted to report this to my first boss, whom I will refer to as Frank, who assured me he would address it, but nothing changed, and eventually, Frank was reassigned. I learned almost immediately after his departure that he had been saying the same disrespectful things. The situation was disheartening. Nonetheless, I reassured myself that I had performed my duties well. After Frank's exit, his superior, whom I'll refer to as Big Boss, took charge. I sought to speak with him to address the coworker's behavior. He told me, and I quote, "As a woman in a male-dominated field, you should really anticipate this kind of behavior." This prompted me to resign. However, Big Boss chose to retire early that year, and the coworker mistakenly made a sexual remark to a human resources representative, which led to his termination. When my second supervisor, whom I will refer to as Satan for my own amusement, replaced Frank, my contributions to the team were acknowledged, leading him to send me an email. At the time, I was looking for a secondary job, so I returned to the position. Sadly, I experienced difficulties with the new supervisor rather swiftly. He made no effort to conceal his lack of respect for me. Satan began in Frank's role, but due to Big Boss's retirement occurring shortly afterward, he was easily promoted. For a considerable period, there was technically no head of our department, as he was effectively juggling 2 positions and was seldom present in the office, which made him exceptionally strict about everything. Achieving anything required demonstrating results. During my first interview after returning, while Frank made remarks such as, "Oh, I didn't realize you'd be so petite," and "You sounded taller over the phone," he never suggested it would hinder my performance, and it never did, allowing me to try different roles. In contrast, Satan more or less informed me from the beginning that I would primarily be assigned to office and table duties, even removing me from night shifts. Frank informed me at the outset that the smallest uniform sizes would be excessively loose on me, which turned out to be true. The shirt reached my knees and needed to be tucked in. The pants had to be hemmed by 5 inches, and I had to purchase my own shoes and belt because the provided ones did not fit. He understood this, even though the shoes I ended up wearing were all black non-slip sneakers for children, because I struggled to find non-slip footwear in my size. And my belt was green since my waist was so small that the only fitting belt I owned was a fashion belt with holes throughout for a one-size-fits-all design. On my first day, Satan coerced me into wearing shoes 2 sizes too large, insisting they were mandatory for the uniform. He also attempted to make me wear a belt, but my pants were literally falling down, leaving no possibility of using any belt in the building other than my green one. Ultimately, he had to concede that I would have to continue wearing the black shoes, although he insisted I buy a sturdy black leather belt as it was part of the uniform. I had already purchased shoes when I was initially hired, and given that the entire uniform was supposed to be supplied, I was somewhat frustrated and simply told him I would address it when I had the funds. Eventually, during the season, I completed several office tasks beyond my usual responsibilities to demonstrate my capabilities to Satan and obtained his approval to supervise early entrance before the baseball games. This was an area of the park restricted to those with special privileges, such as season ticket holders or certain events and ticket tiers. Although my department had to assign someone to guard that area, verifying that individuals could only enter if authorized, it was technically managed by game day security. Things took an unexpected turn at this point. To this day, I remain unsure why, but a game day security officer approached me, stating they would be opening the early access area to everyone in the park half an hour early. This was not entirely unusual, as on days with smaller crowds, they often did so. The peculiar aspect, however, was that it was not true. I had no means of knowing otherwise and no reason to question it. Upon returning to the office, I walked directly into a tumultuous situation. A coworker of equal rank, whom I will refer to as Crafed, was already venting angrily upon my arrival. I generally avoid confrontation and prefer to resolve disagreements quickly and calmly, so I was not yet agitated and simply approached to ascertain what was amiss so we could sort it out. As I drew nearer and he approached me directly, bearing over 6 feet in height, I began to feel slightly anxious. Crafed, who authorized you to leave early access. Me, I don't know. Crafed, you have no idea. It wasn't me, it wasn't him. Gestures to Satan, who did it. No one. Me sharing the same sentiment, I don't know. I don't know. Crafed, you don't know. So there was someone. Said with sarcasm, and I realize he genuinely thinks I just abandoned my post. Me, yes. A game day officer informed me they were closing it early. Crafed, what game day officer? Was it a supervisor? If it wasn't a supervisor, you shouldn't have paid any attention. Now yelling in my face, growing louder, then looks at the monitor. Look. There's another one entering. And another. And another. Oh, look. They're throwing a big party at early access. Proceeds to loudly berate me about how patrons pay substantial sums for season tickets. This is the moment when I descended into trembling sobs and had to rush to the restroom. I wish I could say I reached the toilet, but I did not. I strive to keep my personal issues from impacting my work. However, I struggle with PTSD, anxiety, depression, and social anxiety stemming from years of emotional, mental, and physical abuse by my stepmother, along with abandonment issues and a plethora of other challenges. My parents were generally troubled individuals who exploited me in various ways and severely affected my mental health. Because my struggles originated from abuse rather than a singular traumatic incident, my triggers manifest differently. Fireworks, or even the sight of an armed gunman, do not provoke me, but I cannot handle someone screaming directly in my face. I trembled and struggled to breathe, prompting me to call my boyfriend for help getting home. Satan attempted to reach me on my radio, mentioning something about not causing a disturbance and the necessity for security personnel to maintain composure. Meanwhile, 2 other coworkers who had been in the office during the incident were texting me to ensure my well-being, utterly appalled at what they had observed. The next day, I was scheduled to work a night shift with Crafed, which meant we would be the only 2 individuals in the building the entire night. Prior to that shift, I wanted to clearly communicate that his behavior toward me was unacceptable, and that mistakes should be managed calmly and through my superior, not by a peer yelling in my face. However, I was conscious of my size and feared he would not take me seriously. I asked my boyfriend to accompany me before my shift, simply as a mediator if necessary. We arrived 10 minutes early. Upon entering through the security door, there was a lobby area. A window provided visibility into the security office, and it was at this window that I approached Crafed to speak. My boyfriend followed behind me, standing a short distance away. He was not close to the window at all, nor did we exit the lobby, as my shift had not yet commenced, and civilians were permitted in this area since it was where they would need to go if they required assistance from the building during this time. Here is how that interaction unfolded. Crafed noticing who entered, glancing at my boyfriend behind me, frowning, "What are you doing here?" Me, he is my boyfriend. I Crafed, eyes widening, "Get out." Me, what? No, I Crafed, no, you get out. Points at my boyfriend and the exit. You think you can just waltz in here like this? Me, Crafed, stop. He is just here so I can discuss. Crafed, shut up. What are you thinking, bringing him in here like this? Boyfriend, hey, do not speak to her like that. Crafted, oh, you want to fight? You want to go? Let's go, stands up and starts moving toward me, which is quite a lengthy walk from the window to the door at this point. We were done with that nonsense. My boyfriend and I were nearly at the exit by the time he made it out, yelling that he was banned and barred from entering the building again, demanding we leave, etc. I composed a detailed text to my supervisor recapping the events, then headed home for some needed rest. The following day, I had an afternoon shift. I had already intended to address my concerns with Satan, so it was fortunate that he called me into his office. I did not anticipate being reprimanded. This man issued me a verbal warning for abandoning my shift, as if I had not been yelled at to leave. When I pointed this out, he maintained that Crafted was solely telling my boyfriend to exit, and he mentioned that he had already received a message summarizing the incident prior to mine. At that moment, it hit me. Crafted had communicated with Satan about the incident first, rendering my account irrelevant. He even attempted to suggest that my boyfriend was indeed banned, despite my position allowing me to know the protocols and necessary information. This man was unconcerned with the truth. His priority was simply to brush any issues under the rug as expediently as possible, viewing me merely as a collection of minor problems. So I sat there, nodding politely, biding my time until, after another request for me to acquire a black belt ASAP, he dismissed me. I promptly headed to the office, checked who was on the night shift, noting it was a coworker I will call Snake and another individual, then asked the latter if I could swap shifts. They agreed, and my plan was set in motion. That night, I informed Snake that he could take the first patrol. While he was out, I leveraged my security access to its full extent, retrieving video documentation of both of Crafed's outbursts. I recorded copies of all required footage on my phone, and due to the office work I had completed, I knew precisely how to annotate the timeline of events according to our incident protocols. I drafted all the reports, compiled my evidence, and left a note on Satan's desk. By the time Snake returned, I was fully prepared to expose the truth and seek justice. I embarked on my initial patrol, ensuring I took ample pictures and recordings to capture every detail of the park. Once again, I returned to the office and cycled through my conversation with Snake, sending him out on his patrol after a brief exchange. Once he left, I noticed he had utilized the office phone, which was not unusual or against policy, yet sparked my curiosity. Upon examining the texts from the previous night, I discovered that Crafted had indeed reached out to Satan using that phone. I was able to read precisely what had been communicated and secured a copy for human resources. Finally, I checked the Facebook group chat that Snake had left open. While I do not typically pry into my colleagues' private matters, Snake was among the few I considered a friend, the same individual who had informed me of Frank's comparable sexual harassment issues, which made this particularly relevant, and he had left it open on the work phone. Upon reading the dialogue, I discovered that Snake was just as undesirable as Frank and the fellow who was terminated. Furthermore, he had been engaging in discussions all night with another coworker and our former boss about me, and what they wished to do with me if we were isolated together for the duration of the night. I promptly took screenshots. Even though it was his personal Facebook account, I figured that since he used the work phone, he would still face repercussions, and sent them to myself before erasing the information from the device. I undertook my last patrol for the night, merely enjoying a relaxed stroll around the park as dawn approached. When my shift concluded, I left a large "I quit" in decorative handwriting on the whiteboard and departed. Next, I stopped by Human Resources to submit the reports, having previously sent the emails containing the videos, screenshots, and my detailed account to individuals even above Satan. Satan attempted to portray me to others as merely a troublesome drama queen and insisted that Crafted had done nothing amiss. Nevertheless, within a week, Crafted was terminated, along with Snake and the other coworker. I was right about the likelihood of their facing consequences. With 4 individuals suddenly vacating a department that was already short-staffed, Satan began to struggle. To exacerbate matters, while he retained a few competent employees, those who were lost were genuinely some of the best Crafted included. He still holds his position, but the primary source of my distress was dismissed, and I have heard enough about the difficulties Satan has encountered to know it serves as sufficient revenge. Additionally, I obtained a couple of extra forms of retribution, and I harbor even less trust in men now. Summary: a coworker yelled in my face, provoking an anxiety episode, attempted to confront my boyfriend, and somehow managed to sway the boss to his side. Too bad both were too short-sighted to pause and realize we are indeed the security team, granting me full access to all the video evidence needed to have one dismissed, create a difficult work environment for another, and address a few instances of sexual harassment while I was at it. And when I walked away, I still wore the green belt. Edit: thank you for my first gold.